So, I'm going to try my best today to explain the current dilemma that is the debate on who the one you shouldn't have killed or the vengeful spirit is. Now, if you're a bit out of the loop, you're probably thinking we already know who it is. It's Cassidy. Well, recently people have started to argue that it isn't. Now, this all originates from whether or not that some stories from the Frights books are part of the game's canon continuity, meaning that people are unsure whether characters/stories are actually part of the game's lore. However, before I get into the proper part of the video, this little section is going to explain what the Frights and Tales books are, and I'll have a timestamp to skip this part if you already know what the books are. So, the FiveNightsAtfreddys Frights collection consists of 12 books which each contain 3 short stories, and 11 out of the 12 books contain an epilogue at the end of the books. These are the books and the short stories in them. Number 1, the book is Into the Pit, and the short stories in them is Into the Pit, To Be Beautiful, and Count the Ways. Number 2 is Fetch. Now the short stories in Fetch is Fetch, Lonely Freddy, Out of Stock. Book number 3, 1:35 AM, and the stories in them is 1:35 AM, Room for One More, and The New Kid. Number 4, Step Closer. The stories in this is Step Closer, Dance With Me, Coming Home. Book number 5 is Bunny Call, and the stories in Bunny Call are Bunny Call, In the Flesh, The Man in Room 1280. Number 6 is Blackbird, and the stories in this are Blackbird, The Real Jake, Hide and Seek. Number 7 is The Cliffs. Now the stories inside The Cliffs is The Cliffs, The Breaking Wheel, and He Told Me Everything. Book number 8 is Gumdrop Angel, and the stories in this is Gumdrop Angel, Sergio's Lucky Day, and What We Found. 9 is The Puppet Carver, and the stories in this is The Puppet Carver, Jump for Ticket, and Pizza Kid. Book number 10 is Friendly Face. Now the stories in this is Friendly Face, Sea Bonnies, and Together Forever. Book number 11 is The Prankster, and the stories in this book is The Prankster, Kids at Play, and Find Player 2. Finally, we've got book number 12, which is Felix the Shark. And inside Felix the Shark, we've got Felix the Shark, The Scoop, and You're the Band. However, these stories are scrapped and not part of the FiveNightsAtfreddys Frights timeline. And then we have the epilogues that are called the Stitchwraith Stingers, and these stories appear at the end of each book from 1 to 11. Now we move on to the tales from the Peterplex. These follow the same formula as the Frights books. There are 8 tales books and 3 short stories within them, which also have epilogues at the end of each book. These are the books and each story that's within them. Book number 1 is Lally's Game, and the stories within this book are Frailty, Lally's Game, and Under Construction. Book number 2 is Haps, and the stories within it is Help Wanted, Haps, and B7. Book number 3 is Somnophobia, and the stories within this book is Somnophobia, Pressure, and Claustrophobia. The next book's title is even worse. At number 4 we've got Submechnophobia, and the first story within this book is Submechnophobia, Animatronic Apocalypse, and Bobby Dots Part 1. Number 5 is the Bobby Dots, and the stories within this book are GGY, The Storyteller, and Bobby Dots Part 2. Book number 6 is called Nexie, and the stories within this is Nexie, Drowning, and The Mimic. Book number 7 is Tiger Rock, and the stories within this book are Tiger Rock, The Monty Within, and Bleeding Heart. And finally, we've got book number 8, which is B7-2, and the stories within this book are B7-2, Alone Together, and Ditophobia. And then we have the epilogues that appear at the end of all 8 books. Okay, so with all that cleared up, let's get on to the actual video. So when the Silver Eyes trilogy came out, Scott had this to say: the games and the books should be considered to be separate continuities, even if they share many familiar elements. So yes, the book is canon, just as much as the games are. And so for a while, the Silver Eyes trilogy helped theorising as it introduced new concepts such as Robot Children, Purple Guy's Name, the idea that Freddy's is co-owned by William Afton and Henry Emily, and so on. Then the Frights books came out, and this is what Scott had to say before their release. This will be very different from the original book series, as it will be a collection of short horror stories that takes place in the FNAF universe. The series will launch with 5 books, each containing 3 different short stories with unique characters and plot lines, some connected directly to the games and some not. So for a while, the majority of the fandom treated these books as parallels to characters/stories in the game's continuity, such as a character called Andrew from the epilogues, who was very similar to Cassidy, both vengeful, both tortured their killer, and the fandom also used this epilogue to discover that more than one soul could possess one suit. Now, the story that Andrew comes from is called the Stitchwraith Stingers, which is the epilogues at the end of each Frights book, and he possesses an animatronic called the Stitchwraith, and there are two souls possessing this Stitchwraith. Is called Andrew and the other is called Jake. Jake controls the endoskeleton while Andrew can't. However, Andrew is quite vengeful in these stories. For a while, the fandom saw this as a parallel to Golden Freddy in the games. When Tales was confirmed, Scholastic, the publishers of the books, came out and said all stories from the Tales from the Pizzaplex series takes place in the world of the new and upcoming games. Now this statement sort of had the fandom confused, as the fandom have treated the books as parallels / metaphors for what happens in the games. However, Steelwool released Security Breach's Ruin DLC, which contains a character from the Tales books, and that character ends up being the Mimic. Now the Mimic comes from the Tales book Nexie and the story The Mimic. Now this got some parts of the fandom thinking and reconsidering what Scott meant when he said that some connected directly to the games when referring to the Frights books. It lets them theorising that some characters from these stories exist within the game's continuity. Now, you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with the Vengeful Spirit? Well, there's one story from the Frights books that some fans think takes part in the game's canon continuity, and that's the Stitchline epilogues that appear at the end of each Frights book. Now, like I said earlier, when people first read these epilogues, they thought the Stitchwraith was a parallel of Golden Freddy in the games. Two souls possessing one animatronic, one soul vengeful and one not. Fans are theorising that Andrew, the Vengeful Spirit from the Frights, is the Vengeful Spirit in the games, and him and Cassidy both possess Golden Freddy, but Andrew is the Vengeful Spirit and Cassidy isn't. Now you're probably thinking the FNAF fandom is nice and civil and had a lovely discussion about this. Well, you're probably thinking wrong, because a few days ago an account on Reddit posted a supposed email from Scott confirming that the Frights books have some stories that are in the continuity of the games, and this kicked off the fandom, and so Scott had to step in and confirm that the email is false. However, his next statement did not help the situation at all. So there's full Reddit comment on the screen. However, the first half of the comment basically just denies that the email is real, and basically he doesn't know who sent it. However, the second part is a bit of the concerning part that caused a bit of an uproar. So this is what Scott had to say in the second half. Concerning what people are saying about the canonicity of the books, yes, that is correct. I hope that does clear things up. Everyone have a great day. No, Scott, it hasn't cleared anything up. I don't think I've seen the fandom so split, and I was there during the days of the Dream Theory where everyone was absolutely in uproar over it. However, the reason why the fandom is split is because people don't know that this is a confirmation on whether the Fright stories are canon to the game's continuity. Now you've got some saying it's Scott doing his usual trolling / being vague, and you've got others saying it's a confirmation. Basically, Scott's statement has added more fuel to the fire than it actually put it out, because it's created more confusion, more tension and more arguments. Now take it from me, there's nothing worse than a FNAF fan who thinks they're right because they will go to the most extreme lengths to prove their point is right. Like the other day, I saw a Twitter thread on teaching FNAF fans the English language because they want to prove that their point of view is right. Like they had the whole Oxford Dictionary and everything up and like linked and everything to their tweet. It was mad. It was really extreme, to be honest. Well, personally, I still believe that Cassidy is the Vengeful Spirit and Frights is just parallel, and Scott's Reddit comment was just trolling / being vague, and I'm basically going to think this until I hear like an official clear answer from Scott. But it is a crazy dilemma, and either way I just want it to be over and done with. I don't care whether the Frights books ends up being canon, I just need it to be over with. But thanks for watching, and let me know what your point of view is. See yous.